Address from the London Corresponding Society to the inhabitants of Great Britain on the subject of a Parliamentary Reform. Unblessed by virtue, government a league becomes a circling junto of the great, to rob by law religion mild, a yoke, to tame the stooping soul a trick of state, to mask their rapine and to share the prey. What are without it senates but a face of consultation deep and reason free, while the determined voice and heart are sold? What boasted freedom but a sounding name? And what election but a market vial of slaves self-bartered? Thompson's Liberty. Fellow citizens, of every rank and of every situation in life, rich, poor, high or low, we address you all as our brethren on a subject of the highest importance and most intimately connected with the welfare of every individual who deems liberty a blessing, who partakes in the prosperity of his country, and who wishes to transmit as much of either as he possibly can to posterity. Uninfluenced by party pique or selfish motives, no ways affrighted at the frowns of power, not in the least aware by the evidently hostile preparations of a much alarmed aristocracy, we, the London Corresponding Society, united with a view of obtaining a thorough parliamentary reform, anxiously demand your furious and most collected attention to the presented vitiated state of the British government. We entreat you to examine coolly and impartially the numerous abuses that prevail therein, their destructive consequences on the poor and their evil tendencies on all, as also the rapidity with which these abuses increase both in number and magnitude. We next submit to your examination an effectual mode of putting a stop to them, and of thereby restoring to our no less boasted than impaired constitution its pristine vigour and purity, and we thereunto warmly solicit the junction of your efforts with ours. This great end, however, we believe attainable solely by the whole nation deeply impressed with our sense of its wrongs, united, and as it were with one voice demanding of those to whom for a while it has entrusted its sovereignty a restoration of annually elected parliaments, unbiased and unbought elections, and an equal representation of the whole body of the people. Leaving to the enemies of freedom all violent, tumultuous and unconstitutional proceedings, we invite you to peaceful, well-regulated and neighbourly meetings, wherein industrious, worthy citizens may, as honest men, as good patriots, in a reasonable and sensible manner, laying aside prejudice, seriously and earnestly take into consideration their rights and the welfare of the present and succeeding generation. As men can never barter away the rights of their posterity, as encroachments on liberty or property ceased not to be grievances from their being customary and of long standing, and as a grievance is not the less felt for being denied by those who cause it, feeling grievances enormous, seeing our liberties encroached upon and endeavouring to be entirely purloined from us, as also that our plaints are derided by government and ourselves unlawfully menaced by those in power, we call upon you, all Britons, to remember your privileges as such and to assert your rights as men, to pay all proper regard to your native freedom, and to consider that being the property of no one man nor of any set of men, it is highly disgraceful for you to suffer yourselves any longer to be thus enslaved and disposed of as cattle in a fair, as irrational beasts in a market to the highest bidder. Laying aside all pretensions to originality, we claim no other merit than that of reconsidering and verifying what has already been urged in our common cause by the Duke of Richmond, Mr. Pitt, and their then honest party years back. Now differing from them, we support with candour and zeal, thereby proving ourselves no courtiers, the banner of truth already displayed against the oppressors of mankind, and we take a pride in acknowledging ourselves a part of that useful class of citizens which placemen, pensioned with the extorted produce of our daily labour, and proud nobility wallowing in riches acquired somehow, affect to treat with contempt too degrading for human nature to bear, unless reconciled to it by the reflection that, though their inferiors in rank and fortune, we equal them in talents and excel them in honesty. Still, friends and fellow citizens, possessed of souls far superior to the evil spirit influencing these oppressors, these debasers of mankind, instead of hating, we contemn them, and our motive is not vengeance, but redress. A constitution we are said to possess. We are willing to believe it. If good, it allows redress to a complaining people. If excellent, as many assert, it must naturally point out the means thereof. Let it therefore be publicly and carefully examined. If it is really what it ought to be, it cannot be too well known. If faulty, it cannot be too soon amended, nor can that be done by a more competent judge than the thus collected sense of the whole nation. It is the right of every individual to be well acquainted with the laws that bind him. But how is the peasant, the mechanic, the manufacturer to obtain that necessary knowledge, his time fully employed in labouring hard to provide a scanty meal for his family, and in earning wherewith to satisfy the frequent and peremptory demands of surly tax-gatherers? He has no leisure for such intricate political researches, and even was he, by stealing that leisure from his labour or his sleep, to acquire the desired insight, still, with spirits depressed by his sufferings, with fears increased by the clamorous threats of the pensioned all-devouring locusts in office, the sore-oppressed subject feels the remedy to be out of his reach, and dreads the consequence of being even supposed to know how greatly he is wronged. Such being the forlorn situation of 3/4 of the nation, how are Britons to obtain information and redress? Will Parliament grant them? Will the nobles or the clergy ease the people's sufferings? No. Experience tells us, and proclamations confirm it, that the interest and the intention of power are combined to keep the nation in torpid ignorance. The only resource then, friends and fellow citizens, will be found in those societies which, instituted with a view to the public good, promote a general instruction of our rights as men, expose the abuses of those in power, and point out the only constitutional, the only effectual means of forwarding a public investigation and obtaining a complete redress for a people in whose credulous good nature originated their present difficulties. We will not hurt your feelings by a minute detail of our common grievances. You cannot be ignorant, friends and fellow sufferers, how generally power, place, pension, and title are the rewards of men whose services to the court have been of the greatest prejudice to the country. You painfully feel the consequences: increased taxes, a great part of which are most vilely squandered, a heavy national debt, begun with a design of forming a powerful and moneyed court party, continued with nearly the same view unto its present enormous bulk, and from its commencement militating against our liberties. Too visible are the numerous encroachments on our rights, too common the insolence of our office, the venality of magistracy, the perversion of the laws, the letting loose of the military on every occasion, and those occasions eagerly sought, the subjects' complaints derided, the one part of the nation turned into spies and informers against the other. But wherefore more? Is here not enough to prove beyond a doubt that while we boast the best constitution, the mildest laws, the freest government, we are, in fact, slaves. Yet, fellow citizens, numerous as are our grievances, and close riveted as weighty the shackles on our freedom, reform one abuse, and the others will all disappear. If we once regain an annually elected parliament, and that parliament to be fairly chosen by all, the people will again share in the government of their country, and their then unbiased suffrages must undoubtedly select a majority of honest members, while the very few unsound ones that may accidentally obtain seats will, from the consideration of their annual dependence on the people, think it highly advisable to continue the disguise that procured them their election, and at least wear the mask of honesty, a mask neither at all times necessary nor at all times worn in septennial parliament. Let no man imagine himself unconcerned in the proposed reform. Let no one think so meanly of his situation or abilities as to suppose his coming forward will be of no service to the cause of liberty. Numbers, union, and perseverance must, in the end, be crowned with success, while compared with the small efforts of each individual, associating and thereby countenancing the demand of the nation to be restored to its constitutional rights, how great will appear the advantages resulting therefrom. An honest parliament, an annual parliament, a parliament wherein each individual will have his representative. Soon, then, should we see our liberties restored, the press free, the laws simplified, judges unbiased, juries independent, needless places and pensions retrenched, immoderate salaries reduced, the public better served, taxes diminished, and the necessaries of life more within the reach of the poor, youth better educated, prisons less crowded, old age better provided for, and sumptuous feasts at the expense of the starving poor less frequent. Look not upon this, dear countrymen, as an enthusiastic vision, but rather let us together take a calm and reasoned review of such an honest parliament assembled. Let us in idea curtail their session unto even the short duration of 3 months in 1 year, or 64 meetings, for doing the annual business of the nation. Still 500 honest men, meeting 64 times with both intention and capacity to serve their country, must do something, must employ their time somehow. Contested elections, none, or very few, and soon determined. Party debates, none. The interest of the people being gone. Long speeches, much diminished. Honest men seeking reason, not oratory. No placemen in the Senate to corrupt influences dies away, and with it all tedious, obstinate ministerial opposition to measures calculated for the public good, detesting chicanery, oppression, and injustice of every kind, this honest parliament, finding that the laws wanted simplification and arrangement, would set about it, however destructive their labours might prove to the sordid interests of an ambitious judge, a prostituted council, a packed jury, or a vile herd of pettifoggers, trading justices, bailiffs, or runners. Finding that a most extraordinary waste of public money had taken place under the different pretenses of places, pensions, contracts, armaments, subsidies, secret service money, etc., our honest and annual parliament would, after narrowly scrutinizing the same, retrench every sum needlessly or wickedly laid out, recalling to their mind the wise and wholesome provision of William III, enacting that all resolutions taken in the Privy Council shall be signed by such of the Privy Council as shall advise and consent to the same. They would call for an immediate renewal of that long suspended law, and by so doing, all destructive secret influence would be rooted up, and the people could then, at all times, discover who were their friends and who their foes. The People's Parliament, finding that under various pretenses, grant of common land had been obtained by sundry persons, no way to the benefit of the community, but very much to the distress of the poor, the same would be soon restored to the public, and the robbed peasant again enabled annually to supply his distressed family with an increased quantity of bread, out of the profit arising from the liberty regained of grazing a cow or 2 or 3 sheep, or a brood of geese thereon. With detestation would that Parliament view any man enjoying the emoluments of 6 or 7 places, either needless and overpaid, as requiring altogether but 1 officer, or else their several duties neglected, and the public thereby deprived of that service for which they pay their money. Numerous other reforms would undoubtedly take place, even in the first session of a Parliament, so elected, dependent only on their electors, the people untorn, therefore, by faction, undivided by party, uncorrupted by ministry, and uninfluenced but by the public good. Every transaction would tend to reform, and a strict economy, its natural consequence, might soon enable us to reduce our taxes, and by the integrity of Parliament that reduction would light upon such objects as best might relieve the poor. This, to the people, would prove an advantage and a novel session, and to an honest Parliament, not a tiresome one. Therefore, Britons, friends, and fellow citizens, with hand and heart unite. Claim what is your right, persevere and be free. For who shall dare withstand our just demands? Oppression already trembling at the voice of individuals will shrink away and disappear forever, when the nation united shall assert its privileges and demand their restoration. Signed by order, M. Margaro, Chairman. T. Hardy, Secretary. Ordered that the Secretary of this Society to transmit copies of the above to all the societies in the nation engaging in the same cause. London, 6th of August, 1792.